My personal favorite part of the Elden Ring DLC was all the new cookbooks, but my other favorite part was the new weapons that were introduced, with my personal favorite probably being the Backhand blade. I used these bad boys for a large chunk of my first DLC playthrough and became pretty addicted to them. So I wanted to see how good they could become in the base game. And I don't mean New Game Plus, where you already have 4 talisman slots and full access to weapon upgrades. I mean a brand new playthrough at regular old New Game. So that's what I did. I created a new character and asked Miyazaki himself for the Backhand blade to appear at the round table hold. We're just close like that, and he pulled through. Like the video, and let's see if the Backhand blade can join the roster of absolutely broken weapons in Elden Ring. For early game with minimal stats, I grabbed myself a couple bleed options just to see how zesty it can get on Backhand blades without any Giga Arcane stats. So Bloody Slash and Blood Flame Blade were easily accessible. Then I grabbed the Spiked Crack Tier and Axe Talisman, just in case the all reliable charge attacks would be the best choice at any point in the run. I grabbed Dectus and grabbed Riot's necklace for her for full Altus and Gelmir access, and all the smithing stones that these areas offer. And after the 20-hour journey of collecting stones, it was time to bitch slap patches. Then grab one of the most powerful talismans for the entire run, the Blue Dancer Charm. Next, I decided for Margit I would go all in on the Blood Flame Blade, and Blood Flame Blade also gives your weapon fire damage, so I took out the Avatar and K-Lid for the Fire Shroud and Crack tier. That, alongside Flame Grant Me Strength, and the Faith Talisman to be able to use it, and Margit got demolished. I picked up Cragblade since it's just one of the best ashes in the game, and made progress in Millicent's questline enough to kill the Godskin Apostle and have her chilling on his corpse. Then I killed her, and got myself Millicent's prosthesis, another talisman that just goes crazy with this weapon. The blood-infused backhand blades, with all the buffs I had at this point, melted Godric, even though the weapon was still only mid-game level upgrade-wise, and this was just the surface of the backhand blade. I wanted to do Renala next, and I wanted to do Lightning Infusion for her, since Lightning scales with Dex, and she's pretty weak to it. Killed the Erdtree Avatar for the Lightning Shroud and Crack tier, and got the Ash of War for John Goat. and I think lightning was better than bleed. It speaks for itself. With a third talisman slot and Radagon Soar Seal being the new addition, I went back to bleed for Radahn in hopes that I could cycle him before he launches himself into the air, and it worked. A little greed went a long way and Radahn got slapped around. I wanted Radahn out of the way pretty early so that I could go underground and get the Black Wet Blade. Although I didn't end up using it as much as I was expecting, because you will soon learn Lightning Infusion is just so much better for this weapon. The Falling Star Beast and Altus got slaughtered for smithing 6s. I killed Grail for the sake of min-maxing, and got myself the Ritual Sword Talisman for future use. But for now it was time to lock in on the RTSR setup. I killed the 2 Deathbirds that drop both the Red Feather Branch Sword and Kite Shield. Howl of Shabriri and Faith Knot tier provided me with giga damage, without having to commit a bunch of levels into Faith. And I respec'd and took out the points put into HP and put it into Dex. Heading into Lanedell, and for a bit afterwards, I knew this would be the best option, since the bosses can be scripted pretty easily, and I think the DTS is good proof of it. In Lanedell, I grabbed the Sanctified Wet Blade so that I could do Lightning Crag Blade instead of Keen, which also provides huge value with my physic as well. Godfrey went really smooth, and Morgott was a disgusting one shackle cycle. Mohg was a little different though. Even with 40 lightning resistance, the damage felt a little lacking. So I decided that after Fire Giant and Godskin Duo, a respec into Bleed would be the most beneficial, just for a chunk of mandatory and optional stuff. So after Mohg was done, I progressed to that point. Fire Giant still got destroyed and it felt amazing. And with the ability to script Godskin, it didn't really matter what the build was, but this one was diabolical. And with a bleed respec, I wanted to see how much I could stack this up against Remembrance mode, and it led me to a very easy fight that didn't even let him heal. Next, I actually headed into the DLC and grabbed Backhand Blade. I didn't really want to run 2 copies of it, since I felt I didn't really need to. But with this, I could yoink the Blind Spot Ash of War and take it off that Backhand Blade and slap it on mine with affinities, which, as shown with Fia's champions, it crumples NPCs. And it makes Nile pretty easy as well. The Ash of War specifically might be a little nuts for a good chunk of base game. I decided to go through and knock out everything that I felt would be best with Bleed before leaning back into Lightning. So I took out Loretta and Astel. And I also took out the Putrid Avatar in Snowfields to get the Thorny Crack tier, which boosts successive attacks and stacks alongside the Talisman, so it's a huge boost to this build. Astel was probably the hardest fight with this weapon, and not because Astel is hard, but because my dumb depth perception lacking ass could not get an attack off on him. I got skill issued over the dumbest reason, but Astel is kind of a pushover. Progressing through the main story, and Meliketh was a little annoying with the range, but the damage more than made up for it against the poor glass cannon. And blind spot against Gideon was blind spot against Gideon. The dragons were the last of the bleed build, since they have good lightning resistance, and they both went smooth. Even without bleed procs, the damage was so good on its own, with how much you can stack hits against their slow asses, and I think they were an acceptable send-off to the arcane man lifestyle. I went back to lightning and min-maxed the hell out of my decks, and the addition of the claw talisman led to some absurd damage against the last few bosses. Godfrey got hit with the most unfortunately timed stance break for him. Dude got bitched. The jump attack and Cragblade combo helped with stance breaks against Radagon as well, which led to one of the more trivialized Radagon fights I've ever had. And the damage was more than acceptable against Elden Beast. I think getting him to half before he finishes his scripted opening is a good litmus test for how great a weapon is. This was also up there as one of the most fun Millennia fights I ever had. The speed of the weapon attacks means you can pretty much always use jump attacks and keep her posture weak. I switched to Blind Spot thinking I would use it, but I honestly wish I kept Cragblade, as it probably would have melted her even easier, but it was a pretty easy fight regardless. And although I didn't kill Rykard, I did want to see how the damage would fare, and it was serviceable, but with how close you have to get, just getting hit with the constant fire stagger that Rykard gives you made it so frustrating that I just straight up didn't feel like doing it. I was not about to get trolled by this shit. But it was at this moment I realized I didn't kill Moose, so I killed him very easily. And I think it's safe to say that if the backhand blade was introduced in the base game in the state it's in, it would be right up there with the big boys as a game-breaking weapon. The fact that some of the best talismans pair with it, mixed with how hard and how fast the weapon hits, makes it a perfect weapon. I'm going to be doing this with the light greatswords next, since I like those weapons as well, and I'd like to see how these weapons hold up in the lands between, or in the case of backhand blade, absolutely crumples the lands between. So subscribe so you don't miss that. Be sure to like the video, and I'll see you in the next one.